So last week I made a video about the fantastic news that compounds are being included in the next Olympics, Los Angeles 2028. But since then, there's been lots of questions asked and lots of things flying around, and I've had a little bit of information from a reliable source about a different sort of thing to think about that I hadn't thought about before. And I brought Ash in here so we can talk about it from a compound and a recurve point of view. But the information I've had is that the condition of these new compound athletes, or the new compound category and medal, is that it brings a net zero impact on the number of athletes at the games. Okay? Now let me just break that down. So it means the total number of athletes going to the Olympics is not going up, but we've now got 24 compound archers going. All right? And I haven't heard anyone really talk about the impact of that. Now, what's your gut reaction as soon as I tell you that, Ash?
Terrible compounds stealing recurve spaces.
I thought that might be the view.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, maybe because it's going to be different because I don't compete anymore. And obviously anyone who's a recurve archer trying to get spots or training towards LA is not going to like that news. But that's that's obvious, isn't it? Like, you can't keep everyone happy all the time. But if you take a wider view of like the sport as a whole, I can see that this could be a net positive in the long run, because everyone obviously loves watching the Olympics, but archery doesn't have that many medals when you compare it, especially to some other sports, swimming, athletics, or cycling, or so many other sports. So if we can increase the number of medals, then maybe it's not immediate, but maybe that's going to give more, potential disciplines in the future as well. So maybe at the moment, it's saying essentially they've got mixed team compound, so that's another 3 medals, sorry. But like, maybe we've got that, and then maybe if this is successful in LA, then maybe we're going to get an individual compound event as well, or maybe a 3-person team event as well. So yes, it's a shame. This hasn't been explicitly confirmed yet, we should say.
So many of the things we don't have answers. I've reached out to World Archery, and if they reply, I'll definitely share it with everyone.
Yeah, because it would be good to get that clarification. But let me, I'll just bring up on the screen the exact phrasing of it on the World Archery website from the post was: the addition of the mixed team format for compound ensures archery maintains its equal gender split and athlete quota in LA, which makes it sound like if they didn't include compound, they were going to lose spots. I'm not convinced quite with that part.
No, but also I know that the main push from the IOC at the moment is definitely no more athletes and more medals. They want to give out more medals. So this is this is where we have to grasp the nettle is. It could mean there's less recurves going to the games, or as someone I know put it, it could just mean they just drop one baseball team, one soccer team. But as archers living in the multi-sport world for 20 or 30 years, what do we think the chances are that one less football team is going to go to the Olympics? But it's true. They are looking at when they say net zero, they mean the Olympic Games. So are we going to be able to, as a sport, to grab another 24 places, 12 men, 12 women? Are we going to be able to grab them from another sport? Or, as I sadly expect, are we going to be expected to sacrifice them from the recurve category?
Yeah, because I guess the thing maybe people don't realize, or maybe people do realize this, but ultimately the Olympics is a big business, and it is a business. So if adding these compound medals in brings more televised coverage, ads, people watching, because America's good at compound as well, maybe that's going to add some lots of broadcast media coverage with that as well.
I'm sure it will, yes.
Yeah, if that adds like a net positive, then after LA they look at the stats and see that this has been good, then that's more likely to then add future more medals as well. Whereas at the moment, maybe just with recurves, maybe that was kind of limiting a little bit the kind of reach of archery as a whole.
Maybe. And do you know what? Literally, I just literally had the thought for the first time. Does this mean that someone could take part in both categories? I
I don't
hadn't,
see why not.
I literally hadn't done that thought. And then as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, they'll no doubt be on separate days. So does that mean? Look,
Brady, it's your
I was
chance.
just about to say, we'll take Brady as a clear example. He's been a compound world champion as a junior, but he clearly can handle a compound bow. Can we have
That
our
would be cool.
first double disc? Because swimmers, of course, some swimmers will do butterfly and they'll do whatever the other strokes are, front crawl.
Yeah.
It. So is this going to really change archery beyond where it is at the moment? That would be a fundamental change if you thought you could compete in both. Wow, that would
That could be really cool.
Oh, that's yeah. Or do we have a mixed
And
team where it's one recurve and one compound? There's so many.
that would be interesting to watch as well. I would
Because
watch
straight
that.
away now, no extra athletes. We can have a mixed discipline gold medal tomorrow at no extra cost
Yeah.
of. There's so many possibilities here, and I do have a certain amount of trust for World Archery. I think they manage our sport well, and there's going to be a long-term plan there. I just wish I knew what I wish I knew what that
Yeah, well, it
long-term
was.
plan was, so we could engage in it and think about it.
Because also, obviously, like I mentioned, if I was shooting recurve, maybe like if I was still competing, my outlook would be like, damn, this is annoying. But like I said, as a wider thing for the sport, I can see that this would be good. And also possibly for funding, because basically all national programs, their funding is normally based on how did you finish? Did you get medals? And if there are more medals in total, then that's
Yep.
probably going to mean more funding in total for
Yep.
various different parts of archery. And if a program has compound and recurve, then you can essentially like split the cost of the facility against both parts
Yes.
of the program. So it makes it a lot better.
This could be really significant to our sport. But one of the potential negatives I want to touch on, not that I want to be negative, is we went through this whole process back in the 90s as well about trying to introduce compounds. World Archery have been fighting the compound corner all of this time. And I remember reading a report on it. And basically in the 90s, they said we could have compounds in the games tomorrow. We just have to go to half recurve and half compound, and we could have had both in the games for all that time. But the reason at the time it was rejected, a study of the numbers showed that if we halved the number of athletes, we reduced the number of countries by 3/4. Because in the
Yeah.
lower echelons of the sport, and by low I mean between 20 and 60 at the Olympic Games, we're not exactly low, but
Yeah.
the bottom half of the Olympic table, so many of those athletes are individual athletes from separate countries, and all of these countries get to vote whether archery is in the Olympic Games or not. And if you're a sport who hasn't had an Olympic archer in 20 years, you don't think you've got any Olympic archers coming, and there's a vote to
You're
keep
not going to
archery in the
vote.
Olympics, well, why would you bother voting for archery? So one of our strengths has been there's so many Olympic nations in archery who either have athletes or believe they have a chance, because archery has a relatively low barrier to entry. You don't have to build a velodrome. You don't need a $10,000 bicycle. You have a relatively, in the grand scheme of Olympic sports, it's a cheap one. So that's always kept us in the Olympic movement. But now, do we feel we've moved beyond that? Do we feel like we can cope with a lot less nations? Or my other suspicion, if this continues, is the three-person team will not be
I was
around
just
for
about to
much
say.
longer.
I was just about to say, if that's the case, I didn't realize what you were just saying. I think maybe for LA, they obviously haven't publicized this yet. I can imagine that the number of full country team spots might be reduced, and then they want to retain those individual quota spots. So maybe it goes from, I think it was 8 teams, was it before, or 10 teams? I can't remember how
Something like
many.
that, yeah.
But maybe it's only going to be 6 full country teams get to qualify. I'm just making numbers up,
I know
but
it's...
you heard it here first.
Or they just drop one soccer team. Should we take a vote?
Yeah, but I
We'll
think we
drop
should do
soccer.
the. I think so.
But
Yeah.
there's so much. It sounds so easy. Let's put compounds in the Olympics. But with the years that I've been around, with the people I've spoke to, there's so many knock-on effects. And we don't think about when archery is voted, whether it stays in the games or not. We don't think about our political power our sport has. You know, we're lucky. We looked at it from an athlete's point of view, and we just think about medals and competitions. And of course, that's all we need to do. But now, with a few more years under my belt, I can see that big picture. I can see that it's often not as clear as us athletes want it to be.
Yeah. That's interesting. I hadn't thought all of that kind of through when I saw the news, but that's yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what people think. It'll be interesting to hear in the comments, right?
Yeah, number one comment I've had so far should have been barebow. But
Okay. Okay, fair. I
I
think
think,
that's going to be a stretch at the moment.
and the people who said should have been barebow, it's more fun to watch. Do you know what? Barebow is super fun to watch. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
criticize it at all. But the reason compounds in is if you look at the total number of people in the world shooting a compound bow and
Yeah.
competing within world archery with a compound bow, that's the reason it's in. But yes, we all love barebow head-to-heads. They can be incredibly
Yeah.
exciting.
And I'm glad that they put 50-meter outdoor compound, not. I was worried it was going to be, please don't be 18 meters like compound at the Olympics, because that wouldn't have been like, it needs to be outdoors, especially in LA, good
Well,
weather.
for those people who don't know, the indoor proposal, maybe that was rejected 12 months ago, 6 months ago. It doesn't feel like that long ago that the proposal
Was it
went in.
indoors specifically?
Yes, we had a proposal, I want to say maybe a year ago, where we were going to use one of the venues because there was a venue available because shooting
Yeah.
finished before the end of the games, and there was a 4-day window where an indoor venue could have been used. And the proposal was compounds are going to have the indoor 18-meter distance, and that would have transformed our sport. You'd have had the compound archers living outside. The compound archers would have spent the whole year indoors. You would have had separate teams, separate coaches. It would have been truly would
Not
have sort of
ideal.
separated our sport, really, because you wouldn't have spent much time interacting with each other because you would have been training in different places. And that got rejected. I don't know for exactly what reasons, probably on athlete numbers again. So you're right. It's interesting that it is at 50 meters because it got close to being 18, and I wasn't against that. I didn't mind it. It'd be different,
Yeah.
but anything. I mean, my attitude was 18 meters is better than nothing,
Fair. Yep.
and
Yeah.
I was always good at
Okay.
18 meters, so that's probably why I'm biased. But all right.
Get a bit
So,
of Vegas
like Ash
style.
says, if anyone's got any comments or any questions, and 90% of your questions we don't have the answers for yet, but I still want to know what your thoughts are. And rest assured, please subscribe to the channel if you want to be kept up to date. Every time I see a bit of information, I'll try and jump on here and inform you and try and give a bit of history and a bit of background and try and show you the big picture of this monumental decision that's been made, which is, generally I think we think it's positive, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Take care and good shooting.
Awesome.
First of all, I've got some vacancies in my online coaching school. So if anyone wants some one-to-one online coaching sessions, check out the information in the description. Now back to the video.